Welcome back to Undercover. Waterproofing and Underpinning Secrets, the deep dive where we tackle the tough stuff homeowners really need to know.
Especially when the ground beneath your feet seems to be changing the rules on us.
Exactly. So today we're diving deep into an issue that's, well, it's fundamentally changing basement waterproofing. It's something we've been grappling with and, writing about extensively over on the DGI waterproofing blog recently. It's the impact of climate change. Not just on the weather above ground, but what it's actually doing to the ground below your home.
Yeah, it's a challenge that's escalating quite quickly. And frankly, the traditional approaches, they aren't always equipped to handle it anymore. We've seen firsthand the scenarios that are becoming, well, just more common.
Like that Toronto homeowner scenario we discussed on the blog. Basement flooding, not just once, but, 3 times within a single year.
Wow.
Yeah. But the water wasn't pouring in from overflowing gutters or anything like that. It was actually pushing up through the concrete floor.
From below.
Exactly. And then the real gut punch. The insurance company saying, sorry, groundwater damage isn't covered. That scenario, it's not an anomaly anymore. It's starting to feel like we're facing an underground climate crisis.
And the data makes it pretty clear. This isn't just anecdotal stuff. You look at studies, like one from NOAA, they indicate floods are becoming significantly more likely and more intense due to climate change.
Right.
And think about the sheer increase in billion-dollar weather events in the U.S. The average since 2020 has more than doubled compared to the historical average.
Doubled. That's huge.
It is. This isn't some distant problem. It's impacting homes and families right now, often from directions we just weren't used to dealing with.
So in this deep dive, our mission really is to unpack these specific climate-driven impacts on basements, drawing directly from the insights and experiences we've shared on our blog. And crucially, we're going to look at what you can actually do about it. The practical steps you can take based on our latest thinking.
Okay, let's get into it.
So when we talk about climate change, I think most of us picture, more rain, heavier storms, maybe hurricanes. And yeah, extreme rainfall is definitely a huge part of it.
For sure.
But based on what we've been seeing and discussing, it's not just more rain, it's the way the rain is behaving that's the real challenge. We've started calling it the precipitation paradox.
Yeah, that paradox, it really comes down to what researchers are calling hydroclimate whiplash. It's this really violent swing we're seeing between intense drought periods and then, boom, sudden extreme deluges.
Whiplash, that sounds about right.
It does. We looked at the situation in California on the blog. You had years of really severe drought, right? Immediately followed by these atmospheric rivers just dumping massive amounts of rain.
Okay.
Then back to record heat and a really dry start to the next season. It's not a gentle transition. It's like the climate is just thrashing back and forth.
So what does that kind of extreme swing, that thrashing, do to the soil right around your foundation?
Well, those long, dry spells, they cause the soil to shrink and crack. If you've ever seen, like, a lake bed that's dried up, you know what that looks like.
Yeah.
These deep fissures.
Yeah, deep cracks.
Those cracks, they extend down, and they basically create superhighways for water. Then, when the sudden heavy rain finally hits that dried-out, compacted ground, it just can't absorb it effectively.
Right.
So the water rushes down through those cracks incredibly fast, and that leads to really rapid and intense spikes in the groundwater table.
So the ground isn't acting like a sponge anymore, sort of slowly soaking it up. It's more like hitting a hard surface with express lanes straight down.
That's a great way to put it, precisely. And there's another factor feeding into this, which we touched on too.
Oh, wait.
The atmospheric sponge effect.
That sounds thirsty.
It is. Basically, warmer air simply holds more moisture. About 7% more water vapor for every degree Celsius, the temperature rises. This increased capacity in the air, that's what fuels those incredibly intense, heavy downpours we're seeing more often. But here's the paradoxical twist. That same warmer, thirstier atmosphere, it's also pulling more water out of the soil and plants between the rain events.
So it makes the dry spells even drier.
Exactly. It exacerbates the drought conditions and makes those dry spells even more severe.
Okay, so you've got this cycle. Long, intense drying that cracks the soil. Then these sudden, massive rains hitting ground that can't absorb it, sending water straight down, causing rapid groundwater spikes. This kind of stress cycle is completely different from what traditional waterproofing systems were designed for.
Right. They were built for more stable, predictable conditions.
So systems designed for like consistent moisture or steady drainage.
They just get overwhelmed by these sudden violent shifts. It demands a whole different level of resilience.
Now, while we hear a lot about flash floods and surface water damage, and those are definitely real concerns, the insight we really emphasized on our blog is that the real game changer, the hidden threat that's revolutionizing basement protection, is often what's happening underground.
Right.
It's the rising groundwater.
This is such a crucial distinction, and it often gets overlooked because it's less visible, less dramatic maybe. Groundwater flooding isn't surface water seeking down necessarily. It's when the water table itself, the level of water naturally in the ground, rises up to or even above the level of your basement floor.
And it's not just a coastal thing.
No, not at all. While sea level rise pushing groundwater up is a major issue in coastal areas, we're increasingly seeing this affect inland areas too. And significantly, we've often found that rising groundwater actually precedes surface flooding.
Really? So you might see it inside before outside?
Yeah, you might start seeing water coming up through your floor or at the wall floor joint long before you see standing water in your yard or street.
And the timeline is completely different too, isn't it? Surface flooding is immediate, like bang, it's there.
Right.
But with groundwater, based on our experience, it can often take days, sometimes even weeks after heavy or prolonged rain for that water table to rise enough to start pushing into your basement.
Exactly. And once it's there, it can linger. It might stick around for weeks or even months if the ground stays saturated.
Which leads to that sustained pressure you mentioned.
That's where the sustained pressure really comes in. In areas like Toronto or really anywhere with dense or easily saturated soil, when the ground stays wet for extended periods, whether it's from heavy rain, melting snow, or just a persistently high water table, the hydrostatic pressure on your foundation walls and floor increases dramatically.
Hydrostatic pressure. Remind us, that's basically the weight and force of all that saturated soil and water just pressing against the concrete.
Exactly. It's an immense, relentless force. And it will exploit any weakness. It pushes water through the tiniest cracks, the pores in the concrete, any imperfections in your foundation.
So simple dam proofing, that thin black coating you sometimes see.
It stands no chance against that kind of sustained pressure. It's just not designed for it. It's meant to resist dampness, not active water pressure.
Okay, that makes sense. And speaking of soil and foundations, the type of soil you have around your home makes a huge difference too.
Right.
We talked about clay versus sandy soils on the blog.
Oh, absolutely. They're like polar opposites in how they handle water. Clay soils are dense. They hold on to water like a sponge, which means they can create incredibly high hydrostatic pressure against your walls.
Okay, high pressure with clay. What about sand?
Sandy soils, on the other hand, drain much more freely. Water passes through them more easily, which generally reduces that direct pressure significantly.
But even sandy soils have their own sort of challenges, don't they? We noted they can be surprisingly abrasive over time.
Yes, it's a different kind of wear and tear. As water flows through sandy soil over long periods, the movement of those little sand particles can act almost like sandpaper. Yeah, it can slowly wear down certain types of waterproofing coatings. It's not as dramatic as a crack suddenly appearing, but it's definitely a factor in the long-term resilience of the system you choose.
And then you layer on top of that the whole issue of freeze-thaw cycles, which, well, they seem to be getting more intense and unpredictable with climate change, too.
Oh, this is a major stressor, particularly on foundation walls. What happens is water seeps into tiny cracks or pores in the concrete.
Right.
Then, when temperatures drop below freezing, that water turns to ice and it expands with incredible force, like really powerful force.
And that expansion makes the small cracks bigger.
Exactly, which then allows more water in the next time it thaws and rains or melts, and the cycle just continues worsening the damage over time. We're seeing regions experience much more rapid temperature fluctuations now, swinging above and below, freezing more frequently within a season.
So more cycles, more stress.
Right. It puts concrete and any applied coatings under new kinds of stress they weren't maybe historically subjected to quite as often. It's just another way the changing ground conditions are challenging our homes.
Okay, so considering this perfect storm of challenges, you've got the whiplash weather, the rising groundwater, the soil reacting differently, the freeze-thaw stress. How are we approaching this at DGI waterproofing?
Yeah.
Our blog highlighted that the sheer increase in extreme weather events means we need technology that just goes beyond the basics.
Yeah.
I mean, EPA data, for example, shows 9 of the top 10 years for extreme precipitation in the U.S. have occurred just since 1996. That's a really clear trend.
It is, and it tells us pretty starkly that the old standards just aren't sufficient for the new reality we're facing. As we discuss on the blog, relying on just basic damp proofing is kind of like bringing a paper umbrella to a hurricane.
Right. Not going to work.
No, it simply cannot withstand the kind of pressure and volume of water we're now seeing during these extreme events.
So the shift is really towards true waterproofing systems. And our blog singled out fluid-applied membranes as a particularly climate-adaptive solution. Why are they so much better equipped for these new conditions?
Well, fluid-applied membranes, the good ones anyway, are engineered specifically to handle both significant hydrostatic pressure and movement. A key advantage, based on testing to international standards like ASTM, is their ability to bridge cracks even when temperatures are low.
Bridge cracks. So if the foundation moves a bit.
Exactly. If your foundation develops small cracks over time, maybe due to settling, soil pressure, or those freeze-thaw cycles we talked about, a properly installed fluid membrane will actually stretch and remain intact across that crack. It maintains that continuous waterproof barrier.
And applying it as a seamless layer, that sounds like a big advantage compared to, say, traditional sheet membranes that have overlapping seams.
Oh, absolutely. Seams are inherently potential weak points in any system. Over time, with ground movement and pressure, seams can degrade or separate, creating entry points for water. Spraying a fluid membrane on creates a single monolithic layer that adheres directly to the foundation, completely eliminating those seam weaknesses. It's just a much more robust defense against fluctuating conditions and that hydrostatic pressure.
We also talked about integrating smart technology on the blog. It feels like basement waterproofing is finally moving into the 21st century.
It absolutely has to. I mean, in a world of increasingly unpredictable weather, early detection and monitoring are just critical. Smart sump pumps, for instance.
Right. Tell me about those.
They can provide real-time monitoring of water levels in your sump pit. They can send you alerts directly to your smartphone if there's an issue like a power outage or if the pump fails. And some can even communicate performance data back to us or you.
So you know it's working before you need it.
Precisely. And those little water sensors, too. You can just place them in strategic spots.
Yeah, near the sump pit, maybe by areas where you've had issues before, under pipes.
Exactly. They can detect even really small amounts of moisture and alert you instantly. This kind of early warning is just invaluable. It gives you precious time to react before a minor leak turns into a major flood, which, as we saw with that Toronto homeowner, is absolutely crucial when your insurance might not cover the damage.
Okay, let's talk about the cost for a minute, because it's obviously a significant investment for homeowners. Our blog mentioned the average cost for comprehensive waterproofing is around, $5,200, though that can range quite a bit.
Yeah, depending on the size and complexity, sure.
But the potential cost of damage from one of these climate-driven events, that's where the real financial risk seems to lie.
This is the absolute critical economic point we really wanted to drive home. Most standard homeowners insurance policies have very specific exclusions for water damage caused by foundation leaks or rising groundwater.
So if water pushes up through your floor or seeps through your basement walls,
you are very often on your own for the cleanup, the repairs, the mold remediation, which can easily run into tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, not to mention the massive disruption to your life.
So thinking of professional, robust waterproofing less as just a repair and more like an insurance policy, that really reframes the investment, doesn't it?
It really does. It's your proactive protection against events that are becoming increasingly likely and, crucially, probably won't be covered by your traditional policy. We also noted on the blog that the market for basement waterproofing membranes is projected for some pretty significant growth, forecasting over $3 billion by 2031.
Wow.
That kind of market growth isn't happening in a vacuum, right? It reflects a rising awareness among homeowners and within the industry that the standard, older methods just aren't cutting it anymore. The demand for better, more resilient solutions is definitely increasing.
Yeah, it makes total sense when you look at all the factors we've discussed. And it reinforces the idea that this isn't just about one single product, right? It's about an integrated system, which is something we always stress at DGI.
Absolutely. As we detailed it, a truly effective system, especially in this new climate reality, requires 3 key components working together seamlessly.
Okay, what are they?
First, you need the waterproofing membrane itself, applied directly to the concrete foundation wall to physically stop water from coming through.
Got it. The barrier.
Second, you need a drainage mat or board installed against that membrane. This creates an air gap, basically a clear pathway for any water that reaches the wall to flow freely down by gravity. It also helps relieve that hydrostatic pressure.
Okay, so membrane, then drainage mat.
And finally, the French drain system, or weeping tile, installed right down at the footing of the foundation. This collects all that water channeled down by the drainage mat and directs it away from the foundation either via gravity drain to daylight if the slope allows, or, more commonly, to a sump pump system to be actively pumped out and discharged safely away from the house.
And climate change with these rapid fluctuations makes this whole integrated approach basically non-negotiable now.
Exactly. That flashy groundwater response we talked about, where the recharge season might be shorter, but the peaks are much higher and happen faster. Your system needs to handle not just a steady flow, but these rapid, intense surges. A piecemeal or incomplete system, like just a membrane with no proper drainage, simply won't provide reliable protection against that kind of stress. It'll likely fail.
We even touched on some more forward-thinking aspects on the blog, didn't we? Like using sustainable materials where possible, things like recycled plastics for drainage components or natural bentonite clay in some applications.
Right.
And also how home-level solutions can tie into broader green infrastructure like rain gardens or permeable pavers on your property to manage water flow further away from the house itself.
Those are definitely important considerations for the future, thinking holistically. And it all connects back to larger issues we briefly touched upon, like the increasing risks to aging urban infrastructure, older pipes, storm drains, which are also getting overwhelmed by these events.
Yeah, it's a system-wide problem.
It is. And even potential health risks. We mentioned rising groundwater can sometimes interact with legacy pollutants underground, maybe from old industrial sites or landfills. It could potentially unlock substances like benzene that might then off-gas into homes, affecting indoor air quality. It just highlights how interconnected this issue is and why robust, layered solutions are really needed at every level.
It's definitely a complex challenge. So, okay, let's bring it back to you, the homeowner listening right now. What practical steps can you actually take based on everything we've covered from our experience and research? We outlined sort of 3 key areas on the blog.
Yeah, the first one is really assessment and planning. You need to understand your specific risk. Look into local climate projections for your area. Are you expecting more intense rainfall, longer droughts, more freeze-thaw cycles? Try to understand local groundwater patterns if possible.
And look at your own house.
Critically, evaluate your existing basement system. Was it installed decades ago? Is it just basic dam proofing? Is it truly designed to withstand the kind of conditions you're likely to face over the next 10, 20, even 50 years? For a really detailed understanding of your specific property, sometimes a geological survey can be incredibly insightful about soil types and groundwater levels.
Right. Don't just assume that because your basement has been dry so far, it'll stay that way as conditions change. That's a risky assumption now.
Precisely. So second is system upgrades. Based on that assessment, if your current system is inadequate for this new climate reality, well, it's probably time to invest in comprehensive solutions.
Go beyond the basics.
Exactly. Move beyond basic dam proofing to full extreme condition waterproofing with modern membranes and proper drainage. And definitely consider integrating that monitoring technology like smart sump pumps and water sensors for that vital early warning capability. Make sure your drainage system, including the sump pump, is robust enough to handle rapid water removal during really intense events.
Okay, assessment, upgrades, and the third, maybe most crucial step.
Professional consultation. Look, this really isn't a DIY job, especially when you're facing these complex, changing conditions. As we noted, certified installers, like our teams at DGI, have the specialized training, the right equipment, and access to manufacturer warranties that ensure the system is designed and installed correctly.
Tailored to your specific house.
Yes, tailored to handle the specific challenges of your property in this new climate reality. Their expertise is essential to ensure your investment actually provides the long-term protection you need for decades to come.
So, all right, to wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah.
Climate change isn't just changing the weather patterns we see. It's fundamentally shifting the dynamics of water in the ground around your foundation, particularly with this increasing threat of rising groundwater. The old standards, the old assumptions about basement protection, they're just no longer sufficient. The threat is real, it's often hidden underground, and it's being exacerbated by these wild weather swings and the resulting soil stress.
And being proactive, investing in a robust, modern waterproofing system, it isn't just about protecting the significant financial value of your property, though that's huge. It's also vital for protecting your health from things like mold and poor indoor air quality, which we actually covered in our previous deep dive on common types of mold.
Okay.
Ultimately, it's about securing your peace of mind in what feels like an increasingly unpredictable world. The accelerating climate impacts we're observing really underscore the urgency of addressing this before the damage occurs.
So, you really have a choice. React after disaster strikes, potentially facing huge costs and major disruption, or proactively adapt your home now for the climate reality we are already living in.
Your basement might just be sending you a message about the future. The real question is, are you listening?
Wow, yeah. That question really brings it home, doesn't it? It's definitely worth taking a moment to think about your own home's vulnerability and its resilience in this new era. We really encourage you to explore the DGI waterproofing website, specifically the blog section, for more detailed information on all the topics we discussed today and other insights into keeping your home safe and dry.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into climate change and basement waterproofing. It's a critical topic.
Absolutely. Until next time on Undercover, stay dry.